Hello and welcome to a new weekly video. So today I will show you my part 2 of the band series video. Depending on how long it is, there might be a part 3 or I might try and fit everything into this. I'm going to admit this is the third time I'm filming this video, and the reason for that is because there's so much information that every time it just takes too long. So I'll just jump right into it. If you haven't seen the part 1, I will link it in the description box down below because that explains the beginning of my journey. And if you want to follow the full journey, you might as well just watch part 1 first and then come back to this video. So I'm gonna pick up from where we left off. So last video I was ending at 1 month post-surgery. So in January 2010 I was 160 kilos, and then right after my surgery, like about a month later, I was 150 kilos. I lost 10 kilos first, which is where we stopped. And then the next time I have a significant event that happened in my life was when I got married. At that time I was weighing 135 kilos, so between January and July I lost 25 kilos, which is a massive amount of weight in such a small amount of time, really. I am not gonna lie about this. My focus whenever I got my band was to try and look good for my wedding photographs, and I felt a lot of pressure. Well, I put a lot of pressure on myself, to be honest, and I tried to lose the weight, to drop the weight basically. I wanted to drop it to look significantly different. It did happen. I did look very different, obviously, but it was not the right thing to do now that I can think about it, because the band has to be tightened regularly. So somebody asked actually, why does the band have to be kept being tightened? It's because when you tighten it, there is some swelling that occurs in the stomach, and if you tighten it too much in one go, there can be more swelling and it can block the opening completely. So they can't just straight away just tighten your band completely. They just try to tighten it gradually. The reason why you need to tighten it again is because there is some visceral fat on the lining of your stomach. So if you imagine the wall of your stomach is thicker in the beginning because there's fat on it, as you lose the weight, that layer of fat gets thinner, and therefore it makes the opening of the band bigger, sorry. So tightening it means that you can continue to adjust it despite the fat going away. So that's one of the questions answered in the middle of this. But yeah, so what I did is that I got it really tight as soon as I could, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't completely honest with my nurse whenever I was telling her how much I could eat at the time, because I was so focused on getting my band filled to be able to drop the weight that I kept asking for more restriction. She probably would not have done it if she had known how bad it was. By the time I got married in July and until September time, I only lost 3 kilos. That was in 3 months, and the reason for that was my band was becoming so tight that I could not actually eat any solid food anymore. This is how ridiculous it had become. I could only have an unhealthy diet made of liquid food or things that could melt, like cookies dunked into milk or ice cream, or I could not have a balanced diet. And in my head I thought the more restriction, the more weight I would lose, and clearly it's not the way it works. You still need to eat the right food, otherwise it doesn't work. By eating the right food, the first half of the year I lost 25 kilos, and whenever I stopped doing that for 3 months I lost 3, so it's not really the same kind of loss. Anyway, September I found out I was pregnant with Eoghan, and I was at the time 132 kilos. And during the pregnancy I started by having extreme morning sickness, and I was diagnosed very quickly with hyperemesis, which is basically a condition where it is extreme morning sickness. I had it with both, but with Eoghan I also had I found out during the pregnancy I had gallstones, so that made the vomiting throughout the whole pregnancy even worse, because I had a lot of gallstone attacks and I had to wait until after the pregnancy to have my operation to get my gallbladder removed. So at the end of the pregnancy, and that was after Eoghan was born actually, so there was no baby or water or whatever weight that was inside my belly, so that was in July 2011, 148 kilos. And at that point I felt like a failure. During the pregnancy there was only so much I could control because I was in the hospital most of the time and I was on the bed most of the time and I couldn't pick my food properly, and I just felt like a failure, because to me the band would have meant that by a year later I would have lost a lot more, and it wasn't the case. And it actually, I was feeling so ashamed. It took me until March of 2012 to go and see my nurse again. And when I went to the appointment, I went with Eoghan, and I was convinced she would tell me off for putting on all the weight back, well, not all the weight back on, but a lot of the weight back on. And what she said to me is that she reminded me why I wanted the band in the first place. And she said, you wanted the band because you wanted a baby, and the doctors told you you could not have a baby, and look beside you, you have a baby. The weight, you can lose it now, but at least you have your baby now, and you can just be happy about that, and now we can sort out the weight. So, which is what we did. From that point, I started to listen to her advice a lot more, I think. Instead of being so focused, I didn't feel like I had a deadline or I had to lose weight by then, you know, the way I had with the wedding. So I kind of started to listen to my body a little more, and that's when I understood something which to me is the key to losing weight with a band. I understood that whenever I was feeling full before, the signs were now different. And I think that's where I went wrong in the beginning. In the beginning I was expecting like to feel, to know the way when you're full in your stomach, you can feel the skin of your stomach stretching, and that's when you know you're full. Well, that's in the beginning I was looking for that, and it was never happening, obviously, because the lower part of my stomach was not being filled. And so I kept eating until to the point that it made me sick, because I didn't have that feeling. And whenever I understood that wasn't the right thing, I started to kind of research it, and I was part of an online group of bloggers, and like there was forums and all, mostly girls in America who had the operation around the same time as me, and some of them actually became really good friends to me. And I was chatting with them, and we both were discussing the fact that to us it all felt different, the way we feel full. So for me it's almost like a weight in between, like where my sternum would be. That's the best way I can describe it. I feel a heaviness around my sternum whenever I'm full. And from the moment I understood that, I started to lose weight. But not dropping the weight the way I was. It was more a healthy way to do it, because it's the moment when I decided with the nurse that I would take it slow with the band and still have a lot of control over what I am eating, and making conscious decisions of I'm going to eat this or that, basically. So by the time October came, I started to feel like, even though my band was being gradually tightened, it was starting to feel loose again. So she would tighten it, and then a couple of days later it would feel looser again. So I started to mention it to her, and she said to me, just try and watch what you're eating, don't overeat and all that. So the Christmas came, so I didn't have any appointment that month, and then January arrived, and she said, you know what, I'm just going to take all the fluid out of your band, and I'm going to start measuring how much I put in and how much like the next session we'll take it all out again before adding more, and we'll keep track of the fluid like that. And she tried to suck the fluid out of my band, and there was only half a milliliter when they were, I think there was supposed to be 5 or 6 at the time. And she said to me, there's something that doesn't feel right. So she filled my band again, and at the next time it was again. I think she put 4.5 milliliters, and there was only half a milliliter left at the end. So she sent me for an X-ray with contrast, and what they do is they inject in the part of my band some, I think it was iodine, I'm not 100% sure, but it was basically a liquid that reacts, that can be seen in X-ray. And so they could see in the tube if there was any point where the fluid was leaking out, and that's when they realized that my band was leaking. So what happened is that near the part that's at the bottom on my stomach, the tube had a kink in it just above the part, and at that kink it was pierced, so the fluid was escaping. So every time that half a mil she was sucking was probably just like what was left in the tubing that couldn't come out. I'm not too sure, but yeah. So I was then explaining, I'm sorry, I'm keeping an eye on my nose to make sure I don't forget anything. At the time, so in January 2013, when all that was done, I was 128 kilos. So in August 2013, I had surgery again, so I went back to Belgium for this surgery, and at the time I had put 9 kilos back on in those 8 months. And I had a different surgeon. They stopped working with the surgeon. They started to work with a different hospital than the one I had my surgery first, so I was in a different part of Brussels and with a different surgeon. It was really good, and he explained to me that what I had was pretty common, because they used to put, I'm going to show you on my belly at the same time, not my belly itself, but I'm going to stand up and show you. So hold on, I'm going to zoom out. So okay, there is my belly button here. So there my band used to be here. That's my lower rib there. It used to be just below it. Now it's been moved down here. So that's that much of a difference there. They used to not put them that low, because once you lose the weight, as you have less fat around the part, it can stick out, you know, or not stick out completely, but when you're sitting down, for example, you can see it. There's like a little bump. When I was pregnant with Alfie, actually, I had my bump, and I had a little bump on the side, which was quite funny. But anyway, he decided that it would basically, the reason why they were putting it so high was for aesthetic reasons, but it could happen again if they was putting it that high again. So he decided to place it lower, at a place which he thought would not bother me too much, would still be a little bit discreet, but it will be noticeable later on probably. But I'm never gonna have a flat belly, I'm aware of this. I'm gonna have a lot of loose skin anyway, so I'm not overly worried. I'd rather have a functioning band right now, and it's something that they can reposition the part later on, so I will see what I do in the future. But right now I'm happier with that decision of my band being functioning, because I don't find my belly pretty anyway, so it's just another thing on my belly basically. So August 2013 that was, and I was 137 kilos. By the time July 2014 came, so roughly another year later, I was 120 kilos, so that was 17 kilos I lost in that year, and that's when I found out I was pregnant with Alfie. Now this pregnancy was much more straightforward. I did have problems with hyperemesis again. With Eoghan, they had made the decision to loosen my band completely, because I was, with the gallstones especially, I was being so violently sick that my nurse was worried that with being sick my band could get, like, it could slip or it could damage my stomach. So she made the decision to loosen it completely. With Alfie, she followed what usually is being done with pregnancy. She loosened it a little bit in the beginning because I was being so sick, and you need to make more room to allow being sick, like, without hurting yourself. I could have got it tightened again once the morning sickness had passed, but then James was diagnosed with cancer, and I didn't have time to go to the appointments anymore, so I basically didn't see my nurse after that, and I made the decision to not tighten it again. And I knew I was going to breastfeed, and for that I needed to make sure I was able to eat enough to produce enough milk for Alfie. So I got my band loosened, and it didn't get tightened again until about a month ago, but it didn't completely get tightened again. I decided to only tighten it a little bit. I'll go back to that in a wee minute. With Alfie's pregnancy, I put on 8 kilos, so by the end of the pregnancy I was 128 kilos, which I was pretty happy with, because I mean I was so annoyed with myself with Eoghan's pregnancy to put on so much weight. I did try to stay active the whole pregnancy to try and limit the amount of weight I was gaining, and I'm really happy with that. Since Alfie was born, so that's now a year ago, my weight has been fluctuating between 120 and 125 kilos. I put on a lot of water weight whenever I'm coming near my period or during my ovulation time, and it can make my weight fluctuate by several kilos like that. So I don't know what's my normal weight, but it's somewhere between that basically. It's only about a month ago that I decided to go back to a weight loss mind in a way. The whole last year, if you're not aware, my husband was diagnosed with cancer when I was pregnant. He went through chemotherapy and everything, and for me, well, it had a massive impact, on my mental health, obviously. And in the last, like, since September roughly, I have focused on sorting out my mental health before anything else, because there was no way I could have sustained any kind of form of weight loss journey in that time. I just needed to get my head sorted. I actually feel like, as I'm filming this, I had my last therapy session today, and I feel more able now to focus on losing weight again. So I'm going to take it slow, just as I've done it since after Owen's pregnancy. I will probably get my band tightened a little bit more in May, but I don't want to get it tightened to the point that my band is controlling everything. I want to be in control, and I want to make the decisions, because I want to be able one day to not have the band doing like as much work. I want to be able to live with my band loosened. Somebody asked if I was going to ever get my band removed, and the answer is I don't know. There's not enough data to know how long a band can stay in place, and so I don't know how long it will stay here, but I am expecting that one day it might have to come out for some reason. So it is important for me to sort out I have sorted out my relationship with food now. I had a massive issue with that. I had a lot of eating disorders as a teenager and young adult, and these are now definitely sorted, but I did have to go do some mental work on that, not just like band. It's not the band controlling, it's my head really. So that is sorted, but I just want to feel that I am in control and I am doing the work. I'm not going to say the band is doing the work for me, because that's not true, because if I ate rubbish I would put on weight. So overall now, since I got the band, which is now 6 years ago, I have lost 35-40 kilos. According to the statistics, I am a failure at the band, but I am going to be polite and just say, statistics, I don't care. I could be a lot more rude about statistics, but basically I think they say that you're supposed to lose 50% of your extra weight in the first year. I didn't. Do I care? No, because I just believe that everybody does their thing at their own pace, and as long as that's something that suits me and that is healthy for me, I am happy to do it that way. So that's the way I see the band. The band for me is like a tool, it's like a safety net, but it's not doing the work for me. Now I'm going to move on to questions I've had. Am I happy I did the operation? Yes, I am. And would I change anything about it? The only thing I would change is not the operation itself, is at the point where I was choosing between which surgery I would have, I would certainly give the gastric sleeve more of a consideration. It's not to say that I would pick it, but I would consider it more, you know, seriously. Then, is it hard to live with the band, and did it change your life a lot? In the beginning it did. It was very difficult because it takes a lot of adjustments, but now I feel like all the things have become more like a habit, so I don't have to think, oh, I need to do this or that. I just kind of do it because I'm really used to it. But in the beginning it was certainly very difficult. It had an impact on a lot of aspects of my life. And I'm going to move on to the next question for that. If there are any food that I cannot eat, yes, there are. Technically, you're supposed to be able to eat everything, and if I wanted to eat everything, I could. It's not that I can't do it, it's just that some food I avoid because they can be very problematic. Those food are like really tough meat. I could technically chew it for hours to be able to eat it, but like something like a thick piece of steak, this is hard to say, a thick piece of steak, Something like things that have too much bread. So for example, burgers, you know, with 2 big slices of bread and a burger in the middle, that's just very tricky. So usually what I do is that I either just eat the burger in the middle, I don't eat the bread, or I just eat one side of the bread, or I just kind of make my own thing to be able to eat those things. Fizzy drinks, I didn't drink that many of them anyway before, but they are just a very occasional thing, and they are fine to drink. Like if I drink a glass or 2, that's fine. But if I was to drink a lot of it, I would feel, you know, the gas in the stomach could feel uncomfortable. So it doesn't really bother me because I'm happy enough to drink water, but I know some people who drink a lot of fizzy drinks might have an issue with that. Vegetables. There's different things with vegetables. The ones that have a lot of fibrous, like, you know, thready bits in the middle, these are very difficult. The one that have a tough, shiny skin, like tomatoes, peppers, aubergines and all these, usually what I do is that either I cut them really small so the pieces of skin are not too big when I swallow them, or I bake them or cook them and I take the skin off. It's the skin part that's the problem, basically. Then anything that has a long thin shape, like spaghetti and green beans and all that, I think the problem is that they get stuck between the top and the bottom part of the stomach, and they just stay there, and it's impossible for them to move properly, and that's really difficult. And then another thing is drinking while you're eating. You're not supposed to do it. I think you're supposed to not drink for half an hour before your meal and an hour after, or something like that. No, I don't stick to that, I'm not gonna lie. But it can be problematic sometimes when you drink and eat at the same time. If you imagine that you've just eaten something and you have a small opening, so the food is sitting on top and you drink, the water is just sitting at the top and it can't go anywhere else than back up. So usually you end up throwing the water back up. Another thing you can do is that if the food is quite dissolvable, that's an okay way to say it, it will flush it down, so you're kind of losing the action of the band, really. But point is, sometimes I'm really thirsty when I'm eating, and I just want to drink, so I take a drink, and sometimes it doesn't go right and it's fine. I just throw the water back up and continue eating, and that's it. So I'm gonna move on to one of the questions about, do I throw up a lot because I have a band? In the beginning I did, because, well, when my band was too tight, I did all the time. Every time I ate, every time I drank too much, every time. With time I have learned to know when I'm full, with that new sensation, and I don't overeat, so I don't have to get sick because I've overeaten. The only times I get sick would be whenever food gets stuck, and this can happen sometimes. With time you learn to know why you get stuck and you try to avoid situations where you would. But what tends to happen is that the food would get stuck, and it can either go, well, your stomach will start to contract, so it would either eventually go down, which happens sometimes, but that moment where it's stuck and it has to go down is excruciating. It's like very, very painful. Or you have the other option where your stomach contracts and eventually it just comes back up and it makes you sick. What I want to point out is that you can't compare vomiting as when you are sick, because there is a lot of stomach acid in it, and having food coming back up, because it doesn't taste disgusting like when you're being sick. It just tastes like the food you've just eaten. So I know the thought of it may sound disgusting, but believe me, it's not that horrible, really. I'm trying to think. It also affected my social life, so I had a lot of questions about that. How do I deal with it, with, like, when I'm invited to people's houses? Do I go to the restaurants and things like that? In the beginning I was terrified of eating out. I was terrified of visiting people and eating at their house, and I would actually always try and find an excuse in advance to say, like, for example, I would say to a friend, oh, don't worry if I don't eat too much today, it's just I had a late breakfast, or I'm not feeling too great, or, you know, something like that. I would have like an excuse in advance, so I wouldn't have that pressure to try and finish as much as I could in my plate. I always feel like I would offend people if I don't eat their food, and Well, I used to, I don't as much now. When it comes to family members, they all know I have a band, so usually I straight away ask for smaller portions so I don't waste the food, and I just make it work the way it does. In France it's a lot easier to deal with because when we go, I'm either eating with my parents and they know I have it, so even if I take ages to eat, it's fine. And if we have big family dinners with a lot of people, these can last from 12 at lunchtime to 6 in the afternoon, and people take their time to eat. They kind of socialize around food, so they will eat a little bit and then chat, and also I can really do the same. And I mean, I could have hidden it no problem in France, when here it would have been really difficult because people here tend to eat and then socialize after. So meals are very quick and I cannot eat fast at all because I need to make sure I chew enough to not get stuck. So when it comes to restaurants, in the beginning I was feeling really bad whenever I couldn't finish the food, and I would try to like press it down in the corner of the plate and put my napkin over to kind of hide the fact I haven't eaten much. And until one day one of my friends said to me, why don't you ask to take the leftovers home? And I knew you could do that in America. I know you can still not do that in France because I've asked, and most places I've asked it's actually possible and they would do it. So now I tend to, usually if we go out, if I feel uncomfortable in a place, I know for sure I will get stuck. I don't know, it's a mental thing, but I need to be relaxed enough to be able to enjoy a meal in a restaurant. And so that's why usually if I have a choice, I would pick places where I know there will be options of food that are safe, you know, like I will very unlikely get stuck on. And if I know that I can take the leftovers home, then I don't feel under pressure to finish everything, and I know worst case scenario I don't, and it's like a lunch for the next day, so that's all right. When it comes to going to people's houses, now I'm a lot more confident with my band now. In the beginning I didn't tell, like I told my family. I had to tell James's parents because we were going to Belgium, and I wanted them to know, you know, why we're leaving. And I told a few friends, but that was it. I was kind of ashamed to do it. I was kind of feeling like people would think I'm taking the easy way out when it really isn't. Like, it's really not. It was just a case of I had reached a point where to me it was the only thing that was going to bring me into what I consider a safe zone. Weight was, I still have a lot of weight to lose. Like some people have a band fitted when they are the weight I am now, and I am completely aware of this, but there's I mean, those 35-40 kilos less like lower my risk of a lot of things drastically, and it has had a massive impact on my fertility issues as well. So it has changed my life really to lose already that, you know. I already got a lot of benefits from losing this. I obviously want to lose more. I've been asked if I had a goal weight, and to be honest, I used to see 70 kilos as my goal weight, and then the more I think about it, I don't know if I would be able to reach 70 kilos without having surgery to remove all the extra skin and everything, because I know I will have a lot of it, and it's a matter of where will I feel comfortable in my own body. And I know the lowest I can remember being and being happy with the way I looked, I was 90 kilos. And so in my head I know I'm kind of thinking that anything below that I would be kind of happy with, because even though it's not, I would still technically be obese probably, but to be honest, the BMI measuring is not something I think is accurate at all. So I think as long as I reduce my weight, I mean, that would already be, I would have lost 70 kilos if I reached 90 kilos. That's almost half of my weight. Like if I reached 80 kilos, I would have dropped half of my weight, and that would be ridiculously amazing. Do you know what? So I would be very pleased with that. So anything under 90 kilos, at the minute anyway, I would be very happy with. So just about 35, another what I've done again basically. And yeah, I think I would be happy with that. And I'm trying to see if I have any more questions. Oh, are there any pain? Is there any pain or side effects from having a band? once you've recovered, obviously there is the surgery itself. I don't think there's any that are band specific. There are some to do with the scar. Well, in my situation anyway, there are two things to do with the scars. The first one is that one of my scars, which is like where the bottom of my bra strap would be at the front, in the middle, I have a scar just below it, and it became a keloid scar. So if you don't know what that is, it's when the scar grows out. So it's not flat, it just sticks out basically. And I don't really care because I'm not, like I said, my belly is covered in stretch marks. I have 9 scars across it. It's not pretty anyway. I don't think it will ever be. I don't aim for it to be. So I'm fine with it. James doesn't care about it. Nobody sees it, so it's fine. The other thing that I have sometimes with my scars, especially with the one from the pot, and it's probably because it has a lot more scar tissue because I was operated on twice. The second surgery was done all through that scar. They just reopened it and operated only through that one. Sometimes I would have some pain in the scar tissue, and it's not just the band one. Like I have scars from having my gallbladder removed as well, and that would happen. It's a very hard thing to describe. It's almost like I feel like sometimes there's like electricity going through it. It's very weird, but it comes and goes. Most of the time it's not there. It just happens. Sometimes I have little episodes of it, but it's not excruciatingly painful. It's just bothering me sometimes, but it's not something that would really make me feel, oh, I would never have that done. You know, it's just scar tissue, and I know it can happen for some people. For some it doesn't. James gets it in his scars too. I know people who've had surgery and don't have any issues with it, so I think it's just a personal thing really. It's not band related straight away. Any plans for the future regarding my band? So as I said before, I will just take it slow at my own pace. The statistics can say whatever they want. I am already a failure anyway, so I might as well just do my own thing from now. I will get my band tightened gradually, but only a very little bit at a time, over the next years probably, and continue to just lose the weight, but in a healthy way and in a slower version than what most people would expect with a band basically. I think there's a lot of people who want to just drop the weight with the band. It's not at all the way I see it, and it's absolutely fine if you have a band and you see it like that. I have nothing against that. It's just I think weight loss in general is a very personal thing, and if you want to drop the weight, go for it. If you know with yourself that's what you want, do whatever you think. I think everybody knows really what they need to do, and I know for me, having tried different things, losing the weight, dropping the weight quickly is not an option, and taking it slow and at my own pace and losing a little bit but often is a much more sustainable thing. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's it. I think I covered pretty much all your questions. If you want to ask any more, go ahead, ask them. Most of you have actually reached to me on my Facebook page with private messages. That's absolutely fine. Just do this if you don't want people to know what you want to know, to ask and all that. That's absolutely fine. You can comment on the video, you can send me messages, like private messages on all social medias. I will either reply to you straight away, like directly, or if I have too many questions that are the same and I haven't covered in this video, I might do a Q&A video, but I will first try to answer to people individually, because I think sometimes, depending on like why people ask, it's a very personal answer, and it might be easier this way. So I hope you like this probably a very long video. I hope it was helpful to some of you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the red button somewhere here, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And don't hesitate to follow my video. Every day at 5 p.m. I just post my daily vlogs, and on Thursdays at 10 a.m. I post my weekly videos, which are those videos, product reviews, favorites of the month, tag videos, a whole lot of things. Anyway, I will see you next week for another video. Bye!